Hello and good morning. Today we are going to be talking about the sum and the product of roots. Okay, to start things off, why do we study the sum and product of roots? In grade 9, you will be given a question wherein you will be given your roots or the value of your x, which are, for example, you were given the value of roots of 9 and 18. This was, wait, let's make it a little smaller so it's not hard. Make it 9 and 2. Those were the value of your roots. And the question is like, now make those roots, with the given roots, make it a quadratic equation. You'll be like, what the fudge? How do we do that? This is where the sum and product of roots come in place. In order to make this a quadratic equation, you must first follow the standard form, kind of the standard form, but the formula, which is x is equal, x is x squared, because it's a quadratic equation, then minus, this is a consistent minus, it's consistent, then you put the sum of the roots, the sum of roots, x, because again it's a quadratic equation and this will be your linear term, plus, this is a constant plus again, as well as the minus, it's constant, don't be confused, then the product. Oh, proct, what the hell? Okay, so here it is. It was proct a while ago, but it's product of roots. This is your formula right here. Oh, don't mind my feet. This is your formula right here. Okay, now let's get back to let's try doing it to our example, the 9 squared. Okay, so following the formula, all you have to do is write the x squared, the consistent x squared, and then negative. Now, what do I do when it says sum of the roots? So this is your roots here, and what do we do when we say sum? The sum is the answer of an addition problem, right? So we get the two roots here, which is 9 and 2. We put them here and here, and we add a plus sign in parentheses. Do we have to solve it first? No, it's up to you. Then, in my case, to make it not that hard, if you're already good, you can just add them all together. But if you're beginning, just do what I'm doing. So then x, because there's the x right there, x, then the plus sign, then the product of roots, then you just again copy your roots, the value of your roots, which is 9 and 2. 9 times 2 equals 0, and that's what it is. If you simplify that will already be your quadratic equation. But there's a parenthesis, so you must simplify the parentheses first. So it's x squared. Then what is 9 plus 2? 9 plus 2 is 11. 11, and you get like 11, right? And then there's this negative here, it becomes a negative 11. Then don't forget the x plus, copy the plus here. 9 times 2 is, that's correct, that is 18. Right, yeah, 9 times 2 is 18, so equals 0. And this right here is your answer to this. Okay, so let's get to another example. What if the value of your roots is negative 3 and negative 4? So again, just continue the same thing as a while ago, which is x squared minus, it's always minus here. Then the sum of the roots. So what are your roots again? Just copy them. Negative 3, then negative 4. Well, if you see it like this, if they're both negatives, it's literally just, so you don't get, if you're like, you have two negatives, so if you don't get confused, just put an add into them. And if you remember again, or adding and minusing, subtracting your integers, it's the rule of if it's both, if they're both like the same sign, if this is adding and subtracting integers, so if they're both the same sign, you add them. It doesn't necessarily become the addition sign, the positive sign, but if they're the same, you add them. If they're the same, you add them. But if it's a negative and a positive, you subtract them. Gets? For English people, do you get it? Do you get it? Yeah, I'm pretty sure you get it. If you're grade 9 and you don't know that, what the hell are you doing here, right? Just kidding. Not everyone is good at math, so, you have to. X, then there's always an X, don't forget the X in the middle, then the consistent plus again, and you put the product. If this was like, you just put -3 again, a dot, and -4. What is this dot? Well, that's the sign of, multiplication. Oh yeah, don't forget the equals 0, because if you don't write the equals 0, that's weird. That's like not following instructions. Just kidding. Okay, so let's continue. Once you have rewritten these two, you just simplify them, and that's good to go. We're good to go. And let's simplify it. So it's x squared. You first simplify this. -3 plus -4. They're both the same sign, so you add them. It becomes -7 minus -7. Like, oh no, this is a -7. The other example was like a positive, right? The other example was like a minus plus 9. Plus 11, right? They'd be like, oh, so why was the other one a -11? And so this means it will become a -7, right? No. The other one was a positive, so we had to distribute the negative sign to the 11. And we all know if a negative is multiplied to a positive, it becomes a negative, right? This is the same. That was the rule. So that was the reason why this became a -11. That's why it became a -11x, right? If you recall in the first example, this is the reason why it became a -11x. It's because the 11 was a positive, and you multiplied it to a negative, it becomes a negative. Zian, why do you multiply? That's basic, because they're like, if anything is in the of a parenthesis is beside the parenthesis, you pretty much just multiply it. That's the rule of it. If anything's beside each other, you multiply it. That's a rule in math. That's why we multiplied negative to the positive sign. It becomes a -11x. But what if the one inside the parentheses is a negative sign? It's the same thing. It's negative times a negative. It becomes, that's correct, it becomes the positive, because similar signs, if you multiply similar signs together, they become a positive. It's always like that. If it's different signs, if it's a negative and a positive, it becomes a negative. Yeah, that's there. So this -7 will not become a negative anymore. It will become positive. Dapat positive tayo sa buhay. 7, then don't forget your x. Then put the plus sign. Now, we go to here. -3 times -4, as well as the other one. So, you just ignore the signs first. In multiplying, just ignore the signs first. You ignore the signs, then you have 3 and 4. 3 times 4 is what, Zane? It's freaking 12. 12. Now, how about the signs, Zane? Well, then after you do the numbers, you just see the sign. Negative times a negative is a positive. Yeah. If ever this was like, say for example, this was a positive 4, and this becomes a -12, you just do the similar process you did in the middle ones. You just multiply their signs, you get a positive and a negative, then it becomes a negative. But in this case, they're both negatives, so their last digit will be a positive. because if you multiply two negatives together, it becomes a positive number. So yeah, here's your answer right there. Sorry for the dirty whiteboard. I do not know why my marker is like this. Okay, so now to answer some of frequently asked questions. Okay, so now, what if your teacher was good enough to give you the sum and the product already of the roots? All you have to do is to just distribute them to the equation or whatever. So if the question is like, given the sum and product of roots, make them a quadratic equation, like that. If you see a question, oh my God. If you see a question like this, and you're tasked to make it a quadratic equation, all you have to do is still do the same, but there's no more addition or multiplying anymore because this is already the sum, and this is already the product. So if you don't need to find, your roots is already summed, they're already added, and they're already multiplied, and this is the answer. So to follow the equation a while ago, you just have to do 3, which is, this was the sum, 3x plus 4. And that's all you really need to do, pretty much. Then just distribute, then it becomes x squared minus 3x. Then because this is both addition, it becomes 4. And that's it. That's all you have to do, really, pretty much. If your teacher was, if the question it says was there was already a sum and a product, but if you were given, if you were like given your roots, which was 3 and 4, then you will need to have to add them and multiply them. But if you were already given the sum and the product, all you need to do is to substitute them to this equation. See, sum, put the sum, product, put the product. Oh yeah, I forgot in my the previous examples, I forgot to write the equals 0. Again, always write the equals 0 in your final answer, because if you don't write it, it doesn't become an equation. How does one become an equation without the equal sign, right? Yeah. Now, I mean, that's pretty much it. And if, for example, is it possible that, but this is a constant plus, is it possible that in the product, is it possible that this becomes a negative? Yes, of course, it's possible. If ever your product becomes a negative sign, you just multiply a negative to a positive, becomes a negative. So, okay, so let's put an example. For example, your product was a negative 4. Then your product is 3. X squared minus 3x. And, never mind. Plus, then the product was like a negative 4. Does this become a negative? Yes, because a positive and a negative will become a negative. That's really all you need to do. And oh yeah, equals 0, never forget. And that's it. Yeah, I mean, if you're my classmates, you can just PM me. But if you're just a random person on YouTube who actually accidentally found this video, you can just comment down below. That's it. Thank you very much. Bye.